Okay, Alex Sanchez. This is a 32-year-old case. Obviously, a well-known wrestler. It's made the top front page here in New York, the New York Daily News. Jimmy Snuka. I remember I was really young. I heard rumors about this. Now they must think they have the goods on him to bring charges 32 years later. What's your thoughts?
You know, I was looking at some photographs of Jimmy Snuka in his heyday, and there he was, this incredibly powerfully built guy, in a massive barrel chest, and arms as big as your thighs. Looked like he was just standing on top of the world. And then I looked at another recent photograph. He's old and gray and sitting in a wheelchair. I guess that's what happens as time elapses. But with this particular case, the question I ask myself, and I'm sure the other guests are asking themselves, is how are they going to prove this case? And what new evidence exists that they didn't have access to 32 years ago? And who are these witnesses that are coming forward? Did Snuka make some type of admission to somebody that he did this? Is there some new type of medical science or forensic science techniques that are establishing now what they could not establish 32 years ago? Whatever it is, it's going to be very challenging for the prosecutor to try to prove this case. And on top of that, Snuka's attorney claims, and I don't know if there's any truth to this, that he's suffering from some debilitating, mental illness due to being banged around the ring for so long, and therefore is not even in a position to properly, assist in his own representation. So I think there's going to be so many hurdles to the prosecution of Snuka that by the time there's any resolution in the case, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the guy just ends up dying of old age.
Yeah, well, he is 72 years old, and he does have a form of cancer. And Bremner, defense attorney, 32 years later, the girlfriend, he did speak about it a little bit here and there, but they must think, the government and the prosecutors, they must think they have the smoking gun to bring charges 32 years later.
I would think so. I would think so. I mean, I kept thinking, what took them so long, of course, and of course there's no statute of limitations on murder, but the fact is, what I've read about so far doesn't indicate there is a smoking gun necessarily, although he did write an autobiography where he made some statements apparently that gave the prosecution some pause, and he had some inconsistent statements, namely that he said she'd slipped and fallen when she was going to the bathroom at the side of the road, but then he also said to others, that he'd hit her earlier. She had a lot of injuries, and so you're thinking, how else did she die? I mean, the way they found her was indicative of, domestic violence, but that was a long time ago. And the only other thing I would say on it is we kind of have a saying in the law, and I think Alex knows this one, that a grand jury wouldn't indict a ham sandwich. I mean, this is an indictment from a grand jury. That's all it is. It's a charge. We really don't know what stands behind it and what will come from it. But right now, I think that his defense will do well, and if he's incapable of even being tried, or if the charge outlasts him by virtue of his age and disease, then there it is. But that's a long time to wait to charge in a homicide. It's happened, but it's a long time, and that means it's a tough case.
And also, for the sake of my audience, as you pointed out, there is no timetable when it comes to murder. It could be 50, 60 years even. I mean, that's pretty long, but there is absolute no time, right, that murder can be brought to the courts, right?
That's right, and you even hear people advocating now in the Bill Cosby case that we should have the same rule there, that there shouldn't be a statute of limitations in rape cases. They don't have that in Canada. But for murder, we have an endless statute. You can always charge a murder case.
There's no question about it. And let me go over to you, Joseph Scott Morgan, a former headliner in Madison Square Garden. He teamed with Hogan and was on top of the world at one point. Now finds himself out on bail. Did he do it? The evidence does look compelling, but it's not for me to judge. But what's your take on the whole situation?
I don't know. A few years ago, my office handled the death of Ravishing Rick Rude when he passed on to his reward. And, I kind of found myself, as just your everyday medical legal death investigator. And if you haven't been around the WWE at all, it's and you get around some of the people that are, involved, kind of behind the scenes and whatnot, to try to get information from people, you're kind of, you're in bizarro world. And of course, Rude's case was more medically related. It was directly impacted by his steroid use. In this particular case, you have an individual that, or let's don't talk about him. Let's talk about her. What the victim displays. It's already been stated that she's got tremendous injuries. I mean, this is a very personal crime. Mm-hmm. Is it connected to steroidal abuse, where you have people that are, literally going out of their mind as kind of a steroid-induced psychotic episode? That very well might be the case. I have no idea and no way of knowing. He is in a degenerative state. I don't know that if I were the defense in this case, I would file motion after motion after motion until he goes on to his reward. I don't know if the prosecution has the will to move forward with this. I think looking at this, I'd have to say, what physical evidence do you have to bring to bear with this? If you reflect back to the conclusion that the pathologist had reached all the way back in 1993, the pathologist recommended at that time, in their opinion, in 83, forgive me, that this is in fact a homicide and it should be pursued as such. I'd be very interested to know what does the prosecution possess at this moment in time that they didn't possess back in 83. I can only think that